Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. It's that time of year, monitor recommendation time, and today we're kicking the season off with 1440p monitor recommendations. I've tested a bunch of new products since our last update earlier in the year. Some of my existing favorites are now cheaper than ever, and overall I think the monitor market is quite healthy right now, which you definitely can't say about all gaming components. As with our previous best of videos, we tend to talk about and recommend monitors we've personally tested and know to be good, or monitors that are very similar to products we have tested. It's always worth going back and checking out the dedicated monitor reviews we produce for more in-depth thoughts on each product. But just so you know, these recommendations are not sponsored in any way by any company. They're based on our testing and reviews. Any pricing that we talk about was correct at the time of filming, but of course, you should check in your region given the focus here is on monitors in US dollars. We have links in the description below to check current pricing if you happen to see this video weeks or months after it went live. Anyway, let's get into it. In my previous 1440p monitor guide, I recommended the AOC Q27G3XMN as the best 1440p mid-refresh rate gaming monitor, and that continues to be the case towards the end of this year. If you want a display that's affordable, packs a good resolution and refresh rate, plus delivers great image quality for both SDR and HDR gaming, the Q27G3XMN is still a great choice, especially if you mostly play single-player titles. The Q27G3XMN has a terrible name, but what it does pack is a 27-inch 1440p 180Hz VA LCD panel with a decent 336 zone full array local dimming backlight, providing true, though entry-level, HDR hardware capabilities. And you'll get all of that for around $280 US, which is an astonishingly low price point. In previous years, there were no true HDR products around this price at all, but in 2024, it's now possible to enjoy better visual quality through local dimming at prices below $300 US. Most direct competitors in this price range still only offer Display HDR 400 certification with limited edge-lit dimming or even no local dimming at all. This is where the AOC option stands out. With 336 zones, you get much tighter dimming in HDR scenes, leading to a better contrast ratio in real-world content, richer blacks and shadows, and a high peak brightness that exceeds 1000 nits. Of course, we're not seeing a flagship high-end experience from 336 zones. There can be issues with blooming and so on, but it absolutely destroys the LCD competition at a similar price. If you want to do HDR gaming on a 1440p monitor, proper local dimming is a must, and that's why I highly recommend the Q27G3XMN. Most other low-cost HDR monitors I've tested have either heaps of issues like shockingly bad firmware that doesn't allow you to easily switch between the SDR and HDR modes, or busted calibration that makes the monitor near unusable. None of these things are an issue on the AOC model, although there can be minor issues with scan lines and backlight zone flicker. This isn't just an HDR monitor though. With the 1440p 180Hz panel, you're getting a great resolution and refresh rate for today's games. Motion performance is okay from a VA LCD, delivering the best tuning I've seen from a non-Samsung implementation. Dark level smearing isn't fully eliminated, but not too problematic, and response time speeds overall are fine. It's not a fast monitor by any stretch, but it does a good enough job that it's not a deal breaker for those that want an affordable, true HDR monitor, perfect for story-driven games in particular. If you're buying a 1440p monitor for multiplayer gaming or fast-paced games, this is where the Q27G3XMN isn't as strong of a choice because you are less likely to benefit from HDR. A lot of today's popular competitive games either don't support HDR or are best played without HDR. In that case, you'll want a faster monitor with better response time tuning instead. I'd recommend either saving money and going for the budget 1440p mid-refresh rate choices that emit proper HDR, or jumping up to a budget 1440p high refresh monitor that will deliver smoother motion and lower input lag. Those options are featured later in this video. For everyone else though, the AOC Q27G3XMN is the best 1440p mid-refresh rate monitor and one of the best choices on the market below $300 US. Unfortunately, availability can be a problem. I still struggle to understand why you can't buy such a great product worldwide, especially in countries where AOC sells other products, but if it's available in your region and priced appropriately, it's strongly worth considering. One of the best things to happen in the monitor market this year is the emergence of decent 1440p gaming monitors below $200 US, a price point that historically was reserved for 1080p displays. Now, you're not going to find any HDR options in this range, but if you're happy with SDR gaming and want the best bang for buck, this is where you'll find it. In particular, this is a great choice for those that primarily play multiplayer games and just want something affordable. With a huge amount of competition in this segment and varying prices worldwide, I'm changing up how I recommend monitors here. I'm going to provide a price ceiling that I feel is the maximum you should pay for a non-HDR 1440p 144Hz-ish monitor, and some of my favorite well-performing products that fit the bill. Hopefully at least a few of these options will be a great buy in your region. Right now, the golden zone for budget 1440p monitors is between $180 and $230 US. This is where a lot of decent options can be found. Anything cheaper tends to sacrifice a bit too much, anything above this price, and it's encroaching on true HDR monitors and higher refresh rate models. Lots of 1440p monitors are being sold at too high of a price, so be on the lookout for bad deals. A general rule of thumb for this category is you should be looking to spend about 40% the price of your region's cheapest 1440p OLED. In the US, the cheapest OLEDs are $570 US or thereabouts. 40% of that is $230 US. In Australia, the cheapest OLEDs are about $950 Australian dollars, so the target price for budget 1440p is around $380 Aussie, and this should apply in your region as well. Here are some of the options I think are great buys. The Dell G2724D is one of the best value monitors on the market, often sitting around $180 to $200 US. It's a 27-inch 1440p 165Hz IPS that typically performs as well as more premium options. Buy this if you want a balanced experience between all areas, well-optimized response times on average, and good viewing angles. It's probably the product I'd recommend the most right now, especially in the US. If you can find the MSI G274 QPF-QD inside the golden price zone, it's a great buy, with the lowest price I've seen around $210 US. The MSI model is well balanced too, but it's the product you'd get if you want the widest color gamut, as it's enhanced with a quantum dot layer. Response time tuning isn't as strong as some of the other options, but it generally looks great and comes in at a value price point. Gigabyte's product range typically includes the best factory calibration, especially in its sRGB mode, so if color accuracy matters to you the most, get one of the various M27Q products. The best of these is the newest M27QA, but it's a little on the expensive side right now at $280 US, so wait for a sale. The M27QP or M27Q Pro is also a solid choice, while the original M27Q from a few years ago isn't as well optimized or up to the usual performance standards of 2024. I have seen some of these models in the golden price zone at times, but check each review to see if they're the best fit. I've recently seen the LG 27GP850 hit a new low price point of $230 US, which is great considering its balanced performance and strong response time tuning that still holds up well a few years after release. This is a 27-inch 1440p 180Hz IPS LCD that's a classic all-rounder with basically a single overdrive mode experience in conjunction with a well-calibrated sRGB mode. The only real weakness here is the contrast ratio, so this isn't the best if you want outstanding black levels, but is otherwise absolutely worth considering. Also be on the lookout for the LG 27GP83B, which is a very similar monitor in overall performance, as well as older products like the 27GL850. Though if the GP850 is cheaper or the same price as the GL850, the newer GP850 is the obvious choice. If you want the absolute cheapest 1440p monitor I'd recommend, there's the ASRock PG27QFT2A, which is typically priced between $150 and $190, offering a 27-inch 1440p 180Hz IPS LCD. This is the most basic of the 1440p gaming monitors, omitting features like an sRGB mode and KVM switch that's often found on more premium models. It has decent brightness, good viewing angles, and a great contrast ratio for an IPS, but slower response time tuning than other models I've recommended. Get this if you want something basic and functional for gaming, but don't care too much about the best accuracy or performance. I also think the Asus XG27 ACS is pretty good, but it needs to come down in price a bit before it offers as good value as the other models. The main advantage to this model is excellent response time tuning thanks to variable overdrive, edging out the other options in this area. So if it turns out this monitor is in that golden price zone, again, this is something worth considering. All of these monitors deliver a very similar experience in games with similar current generation IPS LCD panels that lead to approximately the same motion performance. Some models are better tuned for certain refresh rates than others, all include low input latency and adaptive sync variable refresh rate support, so it's hard to go too wrong. Your decision will ultimately come down to edge case features and specific things you like, as well as the price and availability in your region. If you're looking for a great high refresh rate 1440p gaming monitor and just an excellent gaming monitor in general, look no further than today's 27-inch OLED monitors. Now available in multiple flavors, OLED typically offers the best performance in this category, and with prices continuing to fall, there's no better time to jump into the OLED ecosystem than now. My current recommendation in the 1440p high refresh category is the Asus ROG Strix XG27AQ DMG. This is a glossy WOLED monitor offering a 27-inch panel size, 1440p resolution and 240Hz refresh rate with adaptive sync. For most gamers after a high-end, brilliant gaming display, the XG27AQ DMG offers an excellent range of features and performance without being priced well above where it should be. There's a few reasons why I'm recommending this specific model. Firstly, as it's an OLED, it features individual pixel control and elite response times, making it particularly well suited to HDR gaming. Its transition speed at 240Hz results in motion clarity that's roughly equivalent to 360Hz LCDs, and these benefits are seen at lower refresh rates as well, making it highly versatile for all sorts of gaming, whether we're talking single player or multiplayer. The HDR performance on offer here is very good, leading to excellent image quality, particularly for single-player experiences. We get deep zero-level blacks and tight control over highlights, which produces clean HDR imagery free of zone artifacts. This particular WOLED has decent brightness too for both high and low APL content, in addition to a glossy coating that preserves good black levels and is free from coding grain. The XG27AQ DMG is also relatively affordable as far as OLEDs are concerned, slotting in at $650 to $700 US, slightly down from its launch price. Yes, that's still an expensive price tag overall, but this Asus model is better than its competitors, particularly in brightness and especially if you can snag one for $650, which has been its typical price over the last few months. I would generally recommend the XG27AQ DMG over 360Hz QD-OLED alternatives because I believe 240Hz for most gamers is sufficient, and the Asus model is around $100 cheaper than most of the QD-OLEDs. But I wouldn't rule out QD-OLED options like the MSI MPG 271QRX or the Dell Alienware AW2725DF, especially for competitive gamers where the better motion clarity and lower input latency at 360Hz is of benefit. At the same refresh rate though, there's little difference between WOLED and QD-OLED, though QD-OLEDs do have better text clarity, which could be the reason to grab the more expensive offering. With that said, I would generally only recommend OLED for content consumption such as gaming or watching videos. There is a risk of permanent burn-in with OLEDs, exacerbated by static content like you would see when using productivity apps and web browsers. For mixed use cases or situations where you primarily use your display for work, it's difficult to recommend an OLED right now. For $50 less than the XG27AQ DMG, you can also enter the OLED market with products like the LG 27GR95QE and AOC AG276QZD, but generally I recommend spending a little more to get the Asus model. The XG27AQ DMG gets brighter in real-world scenes than those earlier WOLED monitors, and I think a lot of gamers will prefer the glossy screen coating. But if you do want to go for the cheapest OLED products, you'll still be getting all of the fundamentals this screen technology brings, like its fast response times and per pixel control. It's been pretty rare for me to find an OLED that performs badly. There's no change to the products I'm recommending for budget 1440p high refresh rate gaming. This category is being squeezed a bit with value and HDR options in lower price tiers and OLED monitors above, but it's still worth considering a 1440p 240Hz LCD if you have between $300 and $400 US to spend and are primarily a multiplayer gamer. OLEDs at this refresh rate just aren't quite cheap enough yet, so there's still room for these fast IPS monitors that deliver a great competitive experience. The two options I'd be considering right now in this class are the MSI G274QPX and the LG 27GR83Q. I've seen both of these monitors on sale for $350 or less, although typically the MSI model is cheaper, usually sitting at $300 to $350, whereas the LG model jumps between $500 and $350 on a monthly basis. It's just not worth it at $500, but $350 is a great deal. With these two options currently available, it's difficult to recommend any 1440p 240Hz monitor above $400 US if they're an LCD. I've tested quite a few of them and they just don't offer enough additional performance to justify the higher price. Of the two models I mentioned, the LG 27GR83Q is the superior choice, so if you see both at the same price, the LG model is the way to go. Like the MSI variant, it's a 27-inch 1440p 240Hz IPS LCD, but LG are offering somewhat better performance and a richer feature set. It also has somewhat better color accuracy and a wider range of calibration options, so typically it's easier to get the LG variant into a nice and accurate state while also being slightly better from the factory. To me, the 27GR83Q does enough to justify around a 10 to 15% price premium over the MSI G274QPX, so that's the benchmark I'd set for a decision when looking at local pricing in your region. With that said, the G274QPX does get pretty close. It's still a great monitor in my opinion, and areas like motion performance and color accuracy from the factory are only minor downgrades that could be hard to spot. Also be on the lookout for the Gigabyte M27QX, which trades blows with the MSI G274QPX. The Gigabyte a little better tuned for motion, the MSI with a wider color gamut and higher contrast ratio. This battle is largely going to be dictated by price. I don't see any strong reason to spend more on one over the other, so get whichever offers better value. If money is no object and you want the absolute best of the best 1440p gaming monitor, right now this is the Asus ROG Swift OLED PG27 AQDP. A 27-inch 480Hz W OLED, this beast does it all, whether you're after the best single-player HDR experience or the fastest motion and lowest input lag for multiplayer gaming. In many areas that I assess for, the PG27 AQDP comes out on top, for the hefty price of $1,000 US, so it's certainly a more costly choice relative to other 1440p OLEDs. The main reason you'd buy the PG27 AQDP is for a zero-hassle, ultimate clarity multiplayer experience. There is no faster, clearer experience than 480Hz OLED outside of fiddly backlight strobed LCDs, and this Asus model offers this clarity with full adaptive sync and HDR compatibility. In addition to being an excellent product for competitive gamers, the PG27 AQDP is a highly flexible monitor, producing top-tier results across all types of games. If you do a mixture of multiplayer and single-player gaming, this OLED is perfect due to its decent 1440p resolution, stunning HDR performance including per-pixel control, and outstanding contrast ratio. It's even one of the brightest OLEDs I've tested in HDR scenes, slightly outperforming other models and not having any of the panel dimming concerns of QD-OLED. The updated subpixel structure relative to first-gen W OLEDs also provides superior text rendering, and Asus's anti-flicker feature seems to work reasonably well. With that said, the PG27 AQDP does use a matte screen coating, which isn't a favourite among OLED buyers, though the fact that this is one of the main weaknesses suggests that pretty much everything else is a strength. While I do believe this is the best 1440p gaming monitor right now, there are some obvious reasons you wouldn't buy it. Single-player gamers are just not going to be running games in excess of 240 FPS outside of a few rare instances, in which case it's just not worth paying a premium to access the 480Hz refresh rate. 240Hz W OLEDs and 360Hz QD OLEDs are going to offer very similar motion performance and HDR image quality at price points around $200 to $400 cheaper. The value right now is very much in favour of lower refresh rate models, but if you must have the best, the PG27 AQDP is it. And that does it for today's monitor recommendation video. Lots and lots of options to choose from, covering most of the 1440p categories I hope you are considering at the moment. If you do want to learn more about the monitors we've talked about today, we do have dedicated reviews for most of them that will go into the specifics around performance and features, which are well worth watching. Throughout the next few weeks, we'll be updating all of our recommendation guides, so if you're after something from a different category, stay tuned because we'll cover it shortly. And as always, links to buy all the monitors that we've been talking about in this video are in the description below. You can also use these links to check prices if you're watching this video after its release, because things do change quite frequently in the monitor market. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you do want to support all of the independent testing that goes into this video, there's hundreds of hours of reviewing that goes into making these sorts of videos because we test all the monitors that we recommend, then please do consider supporting our independent testing through our Patreon page. Links to that is in the description below, and you gain access to some cool benefits. We have ICC profiles for monitors that we've tested, so if you want a more accurate experience in Windows, then that's a great way to do that. We've also got a Discord chat if you want to get further recommendations and advice from a lot of our knowledgeable Discord members, and I'm in there sometimes as well. Then you can sign up and gain access to Discord too. So anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.